Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for coming here today. Before I dive into today's topic, I want to start with a quick show of hands. So let's start. How many of you here in the audience own an Apple device? Wow, that was a very stupid question because we all know how Apple controlled the large share of the market. So let me ask you a much more specific question. How many of you use Siri?
Sorry, I did not quite get that.
So I think it's a very good moment that everybody here who uses Siri will turn off their iPhone or at least disable Siri because Siri will pop up a lot in this talk. But you know, Siri is a kind of an old technology. Like we have much better, much sophisticated technology today. So by saying that, how many of you here know or use Apple Intelligence? Okay. So for everybody here who don't really know what is Apple Intelligence, it's the new AI buzzword of Apple in the last year, since they launched it last September, emphasizing productivity, but keeps our data safe. And with that, they launched many new apps, AI apps, that's supposed to enhance our productivity, like image tools, writing tools. Even Siri is much more powerful with the capabilities of Apple Intelligence. In fact, this entire research began when one day I had the weirdest interaction with Siri. I was in the office and I was working on my Notion, you know, the documentation app where we store all of our organizational files. And after a while working on Notion, I went up to a different app and another app, and then I initiated a connection with Siri. I asked it a question, and I was very much surprised to see in the response that Siri was referencing a title of a document from my Notion, a classified one. And I started wondering to myself, was that happen on my device? How exactly Siri has access to my Notion? And I start wondering, I might have shared personal information with Apple servers. Do you want to know the answers to this question? Stay up for the rest of the talk. So it's very nice to meet you, everyone. My name is Yoav Magid. I'm 25 years old. I'm an 8200 alumni, and today I work as a team leader and an AI security researcher at Lumia. And I came here today to talk about the privacy concerns that come with Apple Intelligence and the entire AI ecosystem of Apple. But before we dive in, I want one thing you to remember while we talk. These privacy risks we're going to talk about, it's just one example in Apple Intelligence and Siri. They exist everywhere. In every AI app we use today, whether it's on the browser, on our desktop, or even in the operating system. So remember that. So with no further ado, let's talk about our agenda. We're going to first talk a bit, what is Apple Intelligence? How it operates in the background? What is it doing? And later, we're going to talk about what kind of privacy risk am I talking about and what exactly I've done to fight it. And we'll see some demos of Siri, writing tools, and many Apple Intelligence features, and we're going to see how it interacts with our data. And in the end, we're going to talk about a few mitigations and the ways to minimize the risk of these issues. So let's talk first about Apple Intelligence. Like I said in the beginning, Apple came with the motto of enhance productivity while keeping our data safe. How are they doing that? By simply defining in their AI ecosystem two groups of models. The first group would be models that runs on the user device, the on-device models, text models, image models that run completely on our iPhone or our laptops without the need for any network communication. But you know, for some tasks, it's not enough. We don't have enough computational power on our small devices. So in these cases, Apple Intelligence use some cloud models, or how Apple like to call them, their private cloud compute. A sealed privacy bubble with models that no Apple employee has access to it, and they never store data there. And together, they give us many new experiences like we said before. So how exactly are they working together So according to the privacy policy, when a user initiates some task with every app in the AI ecosystem, a model that runs on the user device decides if this task can be fulfilled locally or we need to leverage a larger model from the cloud. And in these cases, Apple Intelligence is going to send only the relevant data to their private cloud compute. But is that all? So not exactly. It's part of it. In the AI ecosystem, there are a few more infrastructure. The first one is the private cloud compute, but Apple has another two infrastructure. The first one is Siri infrastructure, which contains two main servers. The first one is gazuni.apple.com, the dictation server. Fun fact, Gazuni is the original chief officer of Siri. I wonder how old this infrastructure. And they use it for dictation requests. I'm not sure how exactly because for the last few years, dictation happens on the user device without the need for network communication. So remember that. The second server is their search services. Whenever we want to look for something online or around the Apple ecosystem, they use their search services. This is the second infrastructure we talk about. The third one will be about Apple Intelligence extensions. For example, ChatGPT. They communicate with their extension services. So by seeing that on the Apple website, I started looking about the servers. I couldn't find a lot about them. Fun fact I did found was when I searched about the search services, many forums online were mentioned that people thought it was a spyware and that it's some Apple service that spy of every keystroke we enter on our keyboard. It was really funny, but I'm pretty sure it's not a spyware. It's just a search services. So now we know how exactly it operates in the background, which servers are operate. Let's talk about what are the risks here in this infrastructure. In this talk, I'm going to answer two main questions. The first one will be which features in the entire ecosystem works on the user device, and which of them go to their private cloud compute or any Apple servers. And when we go online, which data we share with Apple servers. How I'm going to do that, I'm going to inspect every communication between Siri, the writing tools, image playground, and all the features to their servers. But it's not that easy as it sounds. To be more precisely, Apple use two main ways to communicate. The first one will be for the Siri services, like the dictation and the search, which they use HTTPS connection for that. So it appears to be really easy. But their cloud services, the cloud models, the private cloud compute, use quick connections, which is part of HTTP 3. And it's much more harder to intercept and to analyze that. But luckily, Apple gave us a lot of logs on our devices that we can scan for every packet that goes to the private cloud compute. So just by going to that settings, we can look on every information we sent. So it's nice. So about writing tools and image playground, we covered, and we can just go over it. But in Siri, it became much more sophisticated. The first server was the search services, which was kind of easy. It was just a basic HTTP request with protobuf. I don't have the original protobuf that Apple used for this request, but I can use every GitHub tool that does decoding for protobuf, and I can do best effort to see what kind of data is being sent. So that was an easy one. But for the dictation server, it was much more harder because I couldn't see any traffic. I open Wireshark, I see there is a TLS request and DNS request, but I couldn't see any content. So I went deeper, and I found that Apple used many security layers for their dictation communication. The first one was SSL, which is, every app uses it today. But they also use certificate pinning mechanism in order to, prevent researchers like me and enterprises from scanning their network, and nobody can scan this data. So I worked very hard in the last few months to break Apple Apple Intelligence certificate pinning mechanism. It wasn't that easy. So when I started that, I said, OK, I cannot just use any network solution. I can use like medium proxy or other proxy servers to just intercept the traffic. But I cannot break the pinning from the network. If I will be able, that was a different talk, believe me. So I used a different solution to break the pinning. I used a Frida script in order to break the pinning on my device. So later I can scan this with medium proxy to see all the communications. So I started using Frida, but that wasn't that easy in the beginning because at the first moment I saw that Frida failed. It cannot hook any function in Siri. So I went deeper, and then I'm not that familiar with Mac, and then I found out they use SIP mechanism, System Integrity Protection Services, that prevents me from every manipulation of Apple's processes, including Siri, unfortunately. But thank you to Apple. They uploaded a manual to their website how to disable the SIP mechanism. So it was very, very easy. So after I disabled the SIP mechanism, I said, OK, let's now upload Frida with, and we can see how I can hook Siri functions. So I started with breaking their certificate pinning mechanism. In the beginning, it was very much easy. Like, it was familiar to their previous versions of macOS. They use a fork of Boring SSL operated by Google, but they've done a few changes. So I can just go to the main function of set custom verify and just replace the value that performs the SSL check just to bypass it. And then I will be able to intercept all the traffic. But that wasn't enough. Like I said, they changed the original library. So I went through many of their symbols, many of their functions, and I managed to see another function that is called set verify mode, which looks very familiar. And when I hooked that function, I then managed to see some traffic. I opened my proxy, and I could see a request being made to the dictation server. But I must say I was very confused at that moment. I thought maybe I didn't break the pinning properly because I saw here that the content length is so high, very high, and that they use method that does not exist. I want to believe that I'm familiar with HTTP method, but I don't know ACE method. So it seems like Apple developed their own HTTP stack with their own methods, headers, and parsing mechanism. And that's why medium proxy and other proxy servers could not intercept the traffic, besides the pinning part. Like after that, I used Burpsuit or Fiddler, and none of them could parse this traffic. The app just crashed when the packet arrived to their software. Also, medium proxy, he said, OK, the current content length is different from the actual one. So I thought a lot what I'm going to do. And then I decide, OK, medium proxy is open source. I can just go inside the code and add another functionality. My colleague thought I'm crazy because I wouldn't be able to just go to the code and just add the functionality. So I did it. And now every time they have a joke about me that they have proxy issues, they reach out to me first to solve these issues. So I went to the proxy code, and quickly, actually, I found the code that's responsible to calculating the content length. So I added another case about Siri communication, that if the content length is the length I saw inside the communication, just read until the end of the stream, so I'll be able to see all the traffic. And from that moment, I was able to see the content of the traffic that being gone to Apple dictation server. But it was still hard to understand what is being sent because it was a binary protocol. And like I said, it's their own HTTP stack. And there was a lot of work about decrypting their protocols. It started by they had a very weird signature over their traffic. And then they used many encoding algorithms like zlib. So I had to decode all this. And later, I was needed to decode some formats, Apple formats. Most of them were really easy, like plist, which is a very known format of Apple. And also their keep alive was very easy. It was just a counter. But it was a long process just to see exactly what's going on in their communication. Like, come on, Apple, how many layers of encoding are you hiding there? But after all of that, it was a pretty long way, both on Siri dictation server and the search services. After decoding all that, we managed to create a tool that can bypass all of what I mentioned here. And we actually uploaded to GitHub and to the DEF CON website. So after this talk, you're more than welcome to see the tool. We added an extension to Meet and Proxy that can parse and break the pinning in macOS Sequoia. So now when we know how they exactly operate and we parse all the communication, let's see what they hide there. So we go now over a few scenarios with all the Apple's AI products. But before that, I want to define some baseline for the rest of the talk. These screens might look familiar to you because in the last few months, they were all over the media. People saw that by default, when you agree to Apple Intelligence or Siri, you agree by default for them to learn from all of your experience. I recommend everybody just now go to their settings and disable all the apps. But in the beginning of the research, I disable everything because I don't want Apple to learn from my experience. So I assume that in all the transmission that I'm going to see, there's not going to be any extra information that is not related to my request. So by saying that, let's go for our first scenario. Siri, our old love assistant, which is now even more powerful with the capabilities of Apple Intelligence. Like the new feature they added with Apple Intelligence was the fact we no longer need to use voice activation. I can just type to Siri. And believe me, that saves me a lot. Like, come on, many times I was with some friends, and for random, Siri just popped up and said, OK, I'm setting up an alarm for 6 a.m. So now I don't need to hear that every time because I can just type to Siri. But I got curious what actually changed. So I started composing many prompts to see what exactly triggered the network communication we saw on the website. And all simple prompts like hello or what can you do, how are you today, there were no any network communication. All of that was computed locally. So I had to compose a prompt that I know will definitely goes online, a prompt that started AppleStorm. There is no model in the world that can know what is the weather today without invoking some tool or call to an API. So I asked Siri, what is the weather today in Las Vegas? And beside the answer that it's very hot today, I saw many information that I was not expecting that. So let's go over their communication. I started with this prompt, and I can see a request is being made to the search services with my prompt. OK, makes sense. We start with that. I go deeper, scroll down, and I see my exact location. And I start wondering to myself, OK, that makes sense. Like, I ask a question about the weather. They want to give me the best experience to improve my experience, as they call it. And that's why they send it. But that's not the issue. They send our location every time we ask Siri a question. Even if you ask how much is 1 + 1, beside the fun fact that they need network communication to answer a very simple question like how much is 1 + 1, they also send your location every time. But at least they give us control over it. We can go to the settings. We can disable Siri from sending our location. They actually separated to 2 different settings. Not very much user experience, but at least after I disabled that, I couldn't find the location in the traffic again. So good job. So I went much more deeper in the frame and see what other information they sent about us. I saw the name of the weather app being sent to Apple server. And I was like, OK, also makes sense because I was asking a question about the weather. And maybe Siri and the weather app communicates with each other. So that was make sense. I went to the next step, and I saw that beneath the weather app, there is another app with random letters that I couldn't recognize. But I did recognize the name Parallels. For everyone who don't know, Parallels is a virtual machine manager that I had installed on my device when I made that request. And I went into my virtual machine. It was a Windows one, and there was a weather app inside the machine. The name of the weather app was exactly the same I saw inside the communication of Siri. So they basically went over all of my apps on my device, including virtual machines, which is very intrusive, and they searched for every weather app I have installed. Was that happen just because I asked about the weather? It happens whenever you ask every type of topic. Siri performs a topic modeling on our device, and by that topic, it decides which app it's going to find, it's going to search on our device. You can ask about mails, and it will look for every email client you have, or media players, and even coding. And in fact, that's not all of the apps that they query from our device. I saw another request being made to the dictation server, remember, with the certificate pinning. And I saw all of my active apps being sent to Apple servers. At that moment, Slack was open, Finder, and Notion. Again, I'm not sure what is the purpose of that server and why they're sending all my active apps, but it's been sent. So by now, we saw many info being sent that is not related to my very simple question about the weather. So I'm sure that the next part I'm going to look for will be definitely related to my weather question. I must say I was very confused to see information about Taylor Swift goes to Apple servers. I was very confused at that moment. And after a while, I looked over my browser, and inside one of the many tabs that were open, there was a YouTube tab that was playing that exact song. And I was like, okay, Siri sent what it was playing on my device. Does that happen all the time or just with the browser? In fact, every time that we play something on our device, it goes to the Now Playing queue, both on iOS and macOS. And Siri, when we communicate with it, it sends all the metadata about the Now Playing queue to their servers. You can listen to a song on YouTube or maybe a private recording on your device and the name of the recording. Another metadata like the creator, the size, all of that is being sent to Apple servers. Remember the demo from the beginning of the talk? That was exactly the case. In my Notion document, there was an embedded video. It was playing. I paused it. I went to a different app, but it was still on the Now Playing queue with the name of the document. And that's why I saw the name of the document inside Apple's communication, not just in the response. It was sent to Apple servers together with the title. Very weird. But you know, we saw many things that happens now with Siri just by asking about the weather. We saw that they goes over our apps. They now know I have virtual machines. And they also know what is my favorite song now. But you know, Siri can do much more than that. You can also add integrations to Siri. One of the most features that my friends use is to dictate or write messages to their friends on WhatsApp or iMessage. So I thought to myself, okay, let's send a WhatsApp message through Siri, and let's see how it's going on, because I know that in order to this feature to operate, I need to have WhatsApp installed on my device. So it must be on-device computing. It doesn't need cloud services. Quickly, I proved that it's not true. And they send to their servers not only the content of the message, they send also the contact number and the contact name. And don't try to call that number. It's not Taylor Swift number. But it was very weird because I knew for definitely that it goes on the user device. So I tried something. I said, OK, let's disable all the communication to Apple servers so Siri cannot communicate with the dictation server and the search services. The feature still works. So I can ask Siri to send a message to one of my friends. He will receive that message, but there won't be any communication because I blocked it. So Apple can do on-device modeling, but still they send the content of the message with the contact information to their servers. Without any, it's not necessary to operate. So after that, I started making a list of all the integration they have, like composing an email or checking your calendar. And I saw what exactly goes to their servers. And I managed to see that it happens only with messaging services. Like I can compose an email, the email won't be sent to Apple servers. It's on device, as I would expect. Also about calendar. The only thing that was weird here is the messaging service, which happens on the user device, but still, communication is being sent to Apple server, which is not necessary. But you know, Siri is just one module inside the Apple Intelligence ecosystem. We also have writing tools, which I went through all the logs, all of their features, and I must say, I was very surprised to see that most of the features are actually work on the user device without the need for any network communication. Like I was on a plane here, and I could work on my documents without any network services. Not all the feature works, only a few ones that work offline. They use the localized model. I checked the communication. There was no anything that I didn't expect. Like the data was there, and also when there was online services, I couldn't see any other traffic being made like we saw on Siri. And it was only just for the private cloud compute, also as I expect, as according to their marketing claims. And that's not the only thing that was good. Like I also went over the image playground, you know, where we can interact with images or creating images from prompts, and nothing was sent. Everything was locally on our device. But to be honest, I don't think Apple would take the risk of sending pictures to their servers. I wouldn't take the risk of that. So going on to the last feature we're going to see today about Apple Intelligence, their extensions. When they launched Apple Intelligence, they said we're gonna be able to expand Apple Intelligence capabilities by integrating third parties. In reality, only ChatGPT works. You know, you can just interact with ChatGPT from everywhere in your device, from Siri, from writing tools, the image tools. But there are two things you need to know when you're using ChatGPT through Apple Intelligence. The first one, if you thought that your communication with OpenAI servers are being directly from your device, that's not true. Your communication is being proxied through Apple servers, not the private cloud compute, as most of you probably expect. It goes through their extension servers, and from there to OpenAI servers. Even if you use your credentials of organizational account or personal account, all of that goes through their servers. But what I find more concerned is the fact that when I use ChatGPT through Siri, two requests are being made. The first one to the extension server, but the second one goes to the search services. I'm not sure why, and I'm not sure who has access to it. Like, it's not part of the private cloud compute as far as I know. So I find it very weird that two requests are being made, I don't have control over it, and I don't know who in Apple has control over it. At that point, I said, okay, I should reach out to Apple. I should create a proper disclosure, report everything I found, both the ChatGPT, on Siri, WhatsApp, and the other apps. I send all of the information in February. They request many information from my device, too many logs, and after like a month of researching about it, they reached out and they said, okay, we're gonna fix that. There's something wrong here, and we're gonna address your issues. We're gonna work with our engineering, and we're gonna fix that. I was, okay, I'm happy. I can finish my research, and let's submit it to Black Hat and DEF CON. But 4 weeks ago, they came with a different approach. They said, okay, we're not gonna fix that. I was like, okay, that's weird. And they said all the issues I found were not exactly part of Apple Intelligence. They were like, this is Siri issues. Apple, I don't care whose responsibility for that, just fix that. And they said, they confirmed that the domains I were looking about them, they were actually Siri servers and not part of the private cloud compute. And I was very confused about that because according to their marketing, Siri and Apple Intelligence are kind of the same, as far as I understand that. So I was very much confused about that. And later they took the responsibility to other company. They said, you know what? you should reach to Notion and WhatsApp and tell them that you found that, and they should probably fix it because they probably are not using Siri as they should. Like they use SiriKit, the extension that allows them to integrate with Siri. I wasn't sure if that's exactly true because the issue with Notion was about audio. But I said, okay, I'll reach out to Notion. I think after 3 hours, they came back and said, we don't care about that. You can just go back to Apple, and we're not going to fix that because this is not our issue. I said, okay, Notion don't gonna support me in that. I said, okay, let's reach out to WhatsApp. But before that, I said, I found that also on iMessage. So I'm not sure it's exactly SiriKit issue, or at least WhatsApp issue. So I said, before I go to WhatsApp, I'll check it on my own. I said, okay, let's test SiriKit. I developed an app, I use Xcode, and I went into Apple documentation. I created an app that used SiriKit exactly as they recommend, using their own configuration. And I couldn't find any hidden flags, any hidden configuration. And the same behavior happened here. I saw that when I send a message through Siri to my own app, I saw the same packet goes to the Siri dictation server. I'm not sure it's a SiriKit issue, or at least WhatsApp issue. So I reported back to Apple, and they didn't respond until yesterday, or at least 3 days ago. We're still communicating about that. I think the night before my Black Hat talk, they were like, okay, I think we should address it, and we should see what we can do. I actually was very surprised by the response. They said at first that about the ChatGPT issue, they said, okay, it's expected, like it's not goes through the private cloud compute, but if you thought that it's supposed to be through the private cloud compute, we're more than willing to cooperate with you and to fix our documentation to be more clear on the fact that the ChatGPT communication goes from servers that is not part of the private cloud compute. The second thing they said was about the WhatsApp and the messaging issue. They said, okay, maybe it's not a WhatsApp issue. And I said, okay, what are you going to do about that? And they said they passed it to their engineering, and hopefully they're going to fix it in the next version of, next update version for Mac OS or probably SiriKit. So it's nice to hear that. I hope they're going to fix it. I haven't got any confirmation about that. But at least I have some mitigations to give you today to minimize the risk. First, my recommendation will be that if you can do that, block the dictation server. As far as I know, it's not part of the core communication of Siri or Apple Intelligence. Like you can still use all the services while blocking it, and nothing gets hurt. Everything works properly. My second recommendation will be about the settings. Like I told you in the beginning, you opt in by default. Go through the settings, not on Monday when you go back to the office. Today, go over your settings and make sure you agree to the terms of use and that you know exactly what you've been sharing with Apple servers and what do you let them to learn from. But you know, on a wider approach, I have some takeaways from this talk. First, it will be about privacy policy. I think all of us, including me, we're not really going over privacy policies. Like when I go to a new website, I scroll down, I click, I accept the terms of use and the privacy policy, and I continue with my life. I'm not sure we're supposed to do that. Like, come on, it's so much legal stuff that I can't understand. But something needs to change. If it's about the way they present it, for example, when I checked in for my flight, I was surprised by their iterative what you cannot bring to the flight. So you had to accept everything that you're not supposed to bring to the flight. It will be cool if when we go to a website or to an AI app and we can know for sure what exactly we are sharing with their servers. That would be really helpful. But for now, I recommend using something like ChatGPT just to summarize privacy policies and say, okay, what are they sending about me? What they know about me? That will be really helpful to know what kind of information we share with them. But if you're not going to do that, I would suggest that you use some governance tools to monitor your network, because You saw, one day I saw a confidential document leaving my device, and I was very surprised about that. I don't know who has access to that, and I think we should be more careful on these issues. But it will not going to work if companies like Apple, OpenAI also, they use this certificate pinning thing. Like, it's so frustrated for researchers and for enterprises to know exactly what we are sharing when there is no transparency. Like, certificate pinning is a really good tool when you want to upgrade your operating system. I can see why they need their certificate pinning. But when I upload personal information to AI, to server like Apple server, the dictation server, search services, they should give us the visibility over that. So researchers like us can just minimize the gap of their marketing claims to what happens in reality. With this issue, we cannot do that. But I want to share with you one last thing before you go and continue in the rest of your day. You know that entire adventure was kind of a roller coaster. Like one day I was on top and said, wow, I found things on Apple Intelligence at Siri. And I was very surprised about that. And the second day, Apple said, okay, that's Siri, that's not Apple Intelligence. There are two different products. I was like, wait, what? Like, you can just one day go to Siri and ask it, what is the weather today? And Siri will operate in the background. But on the other day, you can go to Siri and ask it, what are the weather vibes I should prepare for today? And that will invoke Apple Intelligence logic. And that's insane. Like, I'm as a security researcher, I can know that, but they use here two different features for basically the same thing. I ask the same questions, different phrasing, and there are two different features here, two different terms of use, two different privacy policies. And like I said, I can now know that. But as an average user, he can know that? I have last one question for you for today. Can you tell the difference between them? Thank you very much for joining me today. I enjoyed and thank you. And I think we still have some time for questions. If not, I will be available here or outside. Yeah. Can you go to the microphone so I can hear you?
You mentioned iMessage. Was
Yeah.
it using Siri Kit if you try to use Siri to send an iMessage?
Yeah, you can use Siri to dictate or write messages through Siri, and it goes through the servers without the need for that. They're using Siri Kit for that, probably.
Did you file that as a bug also?
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah. Cool. I'll be available here if everybody have a question. Feel free to reach out. Thank you very much.